Good morning. Thank you for joining us to talk about a new hemp law in Minnesota that allows for hemp-derived THC to be sold in the form of food and beverages. This law came forward this legislative session and became effective July 1st, and it's the product of many months of work from legislators, from advocates, from business owners who recognize that Minnesota can create a safe, legal marketplace for cannabis products, and that we need to start doing so now. I want to be clear, however, that this is not full legalization. This does not permit the level of investment in equity businesses, the criminal justice reform, expungement of past records, or many of the other important provisions of House File 600, which we passed during the 2021 legislative session. So this is not legalization that is envisioned through the thousands of hours of work, the many years of dedicated advocacy, the input from people from a public health and law enforcement perspective, from racial equity and business development perspective. We brought everybody together to create House File 600, and we have a lot of work to do in Minnesota on cannabis legalization. But this is an important step forward. And the door is now open to consumers having access to products containing THC that many of them prefer to consume. And I don't think we are going to go backwards. Despite comments in the press from some Republican leaders, Minnesota strongly favors this change. We absolutely did this on purpose. It was an intentional step forward, and it is an opportunity for Minnesota businesses and Minnesota consumers to have access to a product that can be safe and is widely available and used today, however, through an illicit marketplace. I have with us today the author of the bill, another colleague of mine who has been a strong advocate in and outside of the legislature, as well as a Minnesota hemp farmer and an advocate on cannabis legalization. I'm going to start by introducing Representative Heather Edelson, the bill author.
Good morning, everyone. House Bill 3595 that became law this session just took effect on July 1st, allows for the sale of a small dose of THC edibles and drinks as a result of work that was clarifying a confusion around the 2018 Farm Bill, but also a 2019 CBD legislation that we had passed. Many retailers believed that the Farm Bill made it legal for them to sell THC products, but in fact it was not. By report, we knew these products were being sold throughout the state of Minnesota, and many of these products were being modeled after products that children use, such as I think there was Doritos, cereals, Sour Patch Kids, things that really looked like them. We knew that many of these products had potencies that were extremely high and were making Minnesotans sick after my work with HCMC and just looking at what we were seeing with poison control. Businesses were receiving cease and desist letters, additionally, based solely on report, so it resulted in a patchwork of regulation. It felt very unfair to businesses. So what we knew as the adult, there was a market for adult demand to do this, to have these products, but we also knew that people were buying these products in other states. So many reports of people buying these products and bringing them back to Minnesota, buying them online and having them shipped to Minnesota. And the reality is it's making people force them to an illegal choice is not the right policy for Minnesota. And so I'm really proud of the work that we've done here. In doing this work, I collaborated with the Board of Pharmacy and the Department of Agriculture. The goal was to regulate the product and put in protections. One must be 21 or older to purchase this product. It cannot bear likeness to candy, animals, or fruit. It must have child-proof packaging, and the serving size must be clearly labeled. We went with 5 milligrams per serving and the maximum of 50 per package because we were really looking at consumer safety with consuming these products. There's absolutely more work to be done on this legislation, but I'm truly proud of this and look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here. I'm Representative Jess Hanson. I represent the District 56A down in Savage in Northwest Burnsville in the south suburbs. And thank you all for being here today to talk about this important issue. I think it's fair to say that Minnesotans have made it clear that they want a legal cannabis market in Minnesota. People have been working to end prohibition for decades, but over the past weekend, the call to end prohibition and legalize it once and for all has been renewed. The people who support this are both Democrats and Republicans, no-party voters and third-party voters, liberals and conservatives. And despite many of their differences, they have worked together to say that the time is now to move forward with a legal, regulated market. Our legal market will have reasonable taxes, accessible business opportunities, and reasonable regulations. We must ensure that our legal market has space for people who have been most disproportionately harmed by prohibition to join the opportunity to profit from it as well. Black, Indigenous, and other people of color have bared the brunt of the criminalization of cannabis for decades, and white communities have not seen this affect them the same way. And this has to be a reality that we cannot shy away from, and we make sure we prioritize in our work around this. Prohibition has been an outright failure. For too long, prohibitionists have said that keeping cannabis illegal is the best way to improve public safety, the best way to increase public health, and the best way to protect kids. But unfortunately, prohibition has not provided the protections that it promised. Nonviolent cannabis crimes unnecessarily draw law enforcement away from addressing other crimes, and unregulated products have created public health issues like Representative Edelson's bill has now addressed. Youth have more access to cannabis than ever before, and if we really care about making sure that we're improving these things and restricting access to people over 21, prohibition is not the way to do it. It has not delivered on its promises, and fully legalizing cannabis and creating a regulated market can and will do better than prohibition has. So since beginning this work on HF 600, it's become clear who in St. Paul is ready to do this work and who is rejecting and refusing the voices of Minnesotans. As elected officials, it's our job to work on issues that are important to Minnesotans. And while this is one of many issues that are impacting people's lives today, this is broadly supported and something that we must continue to work on. There are also valid concerns and questions about making sure we do this right, and we stand ready and prepared to address those issues as well. Our model was built by and for Minnesotans, and we stand with the cannabis consumers and supporters in Minnesota on our mission to legalize cannabis and create a regulated market. So as I mentioned, there are a whole lot of issues that Minnesotans need us to work on, and House Democrats have worked on this issue because it's one that's important to the people we represent and people who are also represented by prohibitionists as well. So while Democrats stand ready to work on fully funding our education, protecting the rights to bodily autonomy, responsibly investing our tax dollars where they're needed, we also stand ready to work on this. And it matters to the future of equity in the state, and it's simply the right thing to do. It's the right thing to bring this market above board with regulations that help everybody with a safe and legal market so they can consume safely and are fully informed. Bottom line, if Minnesotans want legal cannabis, the right thing to do is to elect Democrats, send us back to St. Paul so that we can continue working on this important issue and all of the other issues affecting Minnesotans today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative Winkler and Edelson and Hanson. Thank you, members of the press. Thank you for being here today. My name is Angela Dawson. I am the president of the 40 Acre Cooperative, and I'm also the president of the Great Rise, a Minnesota coalition that's focused on creating equity within the cannabis legalization market. I drove all the way down here 2 hours because this meeting is important enough for us to speak about the racial and rural equity that's at stake with this new cannabis legalization. It's important for not only Democratic legislators, but also Republican legislators to understand that in Pine County, where I farm at, it is the second poorest county in the state, and that we have just as much food insecurity and economic insecurity in Pine County as there is in Hennepin County, and that cannabis and hemp has been an equalizer economically for our farmers to be able to understand how to be sustainable on the land. Not only does hemp and cannabis create economic equity with rural and racial economies, but we also focus on the environmental sustainability that it adds as a crop in Minnesota. You know, over almost 100 years ago, Minnesota was one of the greatest providers of industrial hemp for the country. And we have a lot of expertise within our state with sustainable farming and ways to create economic opportunities for farmers who haven't had it within the traditional agricultural structure. And so I'm here to thank the work that has been done so far, to say that we know sometimes it takes disruption and chaos to create clarity and for us to be able to move forward in a way that everyone can benefit from. So on behalf of the 40 Acre Co-op members, the farmers who depend on us to have economically sustainable markets in order to grow our crops and to sell them within the state, that we are excited about moving forward and to create economic equity within this new structure. We're saying that we want to legalize, equalize, and also rise to the occasion of equity for Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Ford. I'm the Executive Director for Minnesota NORML. I'm also a community activist and a partner in the Minnesota is Ready campaign. I'm here today to talk to you guys about social, racial, and economical justice. As we do celebrate these new wins that the legislators have passed for us, it's important that we pay attention to the fact that this is not full legalization. The only way to help our community is to end prohibition. As most of us know, it was rooted in racism, and people of color in our communities are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated for cannabis offenses. We have to keep continuing to push that agenda and let people know as we push forward with legalization that we have to think about the people that were most impacted by prohibition, the people that are incarcerated still, the people that are continuously being incarcerated for marijuana offenses, the families that are losing family members because of marijuana as our nation continues to legalize cannabis across the nation, and also the people that are losing their lives because of marijuana, like Philando Castile, who was murdered because of the smell of marijuana. We have to continue to push forward and look at it as a racial and economical justice issue. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we are open for any questions you may have.
Majority Leader, how come we didn't hear about this bill during session? When you were doing 600, we got a press release like every other day from Matt. Was that on purpose that you wanted to keep this bill on the down low and not raise attention to it? The governor didn't even describe it when he signed it the way you're describing it right now.
Sometimes legislation benefits from a lot of publicity, and sometimes legislation benefits from the ability to do the work more quietly. But it was all done in the public eye. There were multiple committee hearings. The conference committee discussed this in public. The bills were all posted. There was plenty of time for anybody interested to take a look. But drawing attention to this change in the regulatory structure, I don't think would have helped the bill pass.
Why? I don't understand. If it's such a good thing, and if it has bipartisan support, and if it does all these things, why did you need to keep it quiet?
It wasn't kept quiet. It was done publicly. We just didn't promote it because sometimes having more public attention amps up the level of political pressure that certain people in the other party may feel, perhaps from their advocacy base, perhaps from other pressure points. So just allowing space for legislators to do this work and try to get the best bill possible was the strategy.
Do you think this would have passed if there was more publicity around it? Do you think it would have passed for the Senate?
We were in a situation in which we had products being sold in the marketplace. There was a lot of uncertainty about what the legal requirements were, if any, that applied to them. And so we had a situation to manage and a mess to try to clean up. I don't know whether more publicity early on would have made it possible to pass the bill or not. We also had to realize that there were limits to what we could accomplish. If you set an expectation that full legalization is going to be the result of a bill like this, I think people would have been pretty disappointed. The way we did this through Representative Edelson's work, through the very dedicated work of our House staff, and with Senate being engaged as well, we were able to get the best bill possible, and I don't want to second guess the level of publicity it's had until now.
I guess I'm still not sure I understand how the Board of Pharmacy didn't know about the full extent of this. I think that needs to be clarified as to how much you informed them, how they asked questions, what you told them about what this would do.
The Board of Pharmacy was engaged from the very beginning, and Representative Edelson can talk about this. The Star Tribune has emails, I think, showing their engagement as in the month of March, 2 months before the end of session. Certainly they were aware of what the impact of this legislation would be, and they in fact referred to it as a political question, so it was outside of the scope of what the Board of Pharmacy executive director was going to decide. It was a question for legislators to decide. It was a policy question. The Board of Pharmacy was not unaware at any step of this process.
Is there a sense that there's...
I think Representative also said that these will not be in the shape or form of candy, animals, or fruit. Every picture I've looked at, it looks a heck of a lot like candy.
Absolutely, and I'm seeing some of those myself, and so later this week I'll be having more information about how we plan to handle that as a state and my approach to that. I'm just not quite ready to roll that out yet. We have some meetings that are happening right now to deal with that. But it is illegal. It is very clearly written in the law that it should not take the form of candy and animal, so yes, there's going to be some problems in terms of how do we enforce this. But I will say that this law makes a very clear step of what is legal and illegal, and I think that is a help for the state of Minnesota.
Is there a sense, though, that there's kind of a Wild West now because there's so many options for beverages and edibles, and they can be sold almost anywhere? Is that right?
And I'll have more information on that later this week as well. But it was a Wild West before, let's be clear.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you all, I guess, put more safeguards into the bill? I mean, it was going under the radar, obviously, but if you had a thought that this might pass, why not put more in there?
I think if we put in licensing structures and fees and did all of that, this would never have passed.
It would have had to go through the tax committee and other committees where it would have gotten more publicity?
No, the issue is that the way this should be done is by creating a cannabis management board, which is what we propose in House File 600, a board that is specifically authorized to administer a licensing system, to approve product sales, to have a robust enforcement mechanism, but to create an entire cannabis management board essentially leads to full legalization, which Republicans were not willing to do. So in order to address this issue of THC in edibles and beverages, and the perception widely shared in the parts of the industry anyway that it was already legal to sell, we actually created more constraints and clarity in the marketplace than what we had before. But to take the extra step of doing the work as it should be done through a cannabis management board was the step towards full legalization that Republicans would not agree to.
Will there be a desire?
Why are we here at Indeed Brewing?
So one of the potential market, and actually you'd better to talk to this than anybody else, markets is beverages. And so there are craft brewers and other folks involved in the brewing industry who can sell not products mixed with beer, but who can sell products with THC in them. And it's another additional market entry point. And I think and again, why don't you answer this, but the market for beverages and edibles is increasingly the biggest part of the marketplace for cannabis and THC.
Yeah, and I think I would just also say that, as a fourth generation farmer here in Minnesota, that farmers actually do care about their communities. They care about children, they care about public safety, they care about public health. And so we also know that we have a need for functional health beverages like THC and CBD containing beverages that actually were already being sold without regulation. So for this is a step forward. It's a step forward for us to be able to provide craft quality ingredients for brewers and growers in the state, and we think that this is something that can only benefit the farming economy and help us improve the quality of products that are out. Before this law passed, also other companies from outside of Minnesota were selling to Minnesota markets without any kind of, we didn't know what their requirements were, with any kind of labeling, any kind of marketing. And so this is a step, this is an improvement that can allow our farmers and our processors to be able to follow some guidelines in terms of quality and standards for the marketplace.
Representative Edelson, if I could just ask you a question about what you're going to be doing later this week to clarify or to codify who can sell, or I mean, that certainly needs a little bit more explanation, seeing that this is legal right now. I mean, consumers need to know.
I'm working with the League of Minnesota Cities on something that we will be rolling out, I think, on Thursday. So I will definitely be letting the media know more about that.
And what will it focus on? Who can sell this?
It will focus on making sure that we have compliance with the law.
So are you expecting local governments to pass ordinances? Because you're out of session, so you're not going to be able to pass anything.
Everybody can wait till Thursday. I will have more information then. I'm sorry. We're working on it.
You brought us here today, and there's a really good question being asked. What might you do Thursday to make this good when it's not good right now?
That is exactly what we're going to be prepared to roll out on Thursday.
Beverages. The Board of Pharmacy guidance from last week said hemp-derived products cannot be added to food or beverages by restaurant, bars, other businesses that prepare food and beverages for on-site or takeaway consumption. How's that possible then? Why are we here if the Board of Pharmacy says that they can't do that?
Can you ask the question again?
Yeah. The Board of Pharmacy guidance that they released last week, they said that hemp-derived products cannot be added to food or beverages by restaurants, bars, other businesses that prepare food or beverage for on-site or takeaway consumption. Now, again, I didn't see that in the law, but the Board of Pharmacy said that last week.
So that would be like a restaurant can't add THC to items on the menu versus
bars with beverages or other businesses that prepare food or beverages for on-site or takeaway
right.
consumption.
But if you're selling products in the marketplace, that would not be the same thing as on-site consumption of food and beverage.
Okay. So you wouldn't see a tap beer here with CBD in it then?
You would probably, I don't know about Indeed, but tap beer with CBD is not something that is, well, let me just say it this way. Breweries are creating and distributing CBD-based beverages already.
What would you say to consumers to explain this period where there's a lot, it seems like up in the air and a lot of confusion, even amongst folks about what exactly is legal, how are you going to keep the candies part out of it? I mean, there are a lot of questions. What would you tell consumers right now who want to go out and buy some edibles or buy a drink right now today?
Products in the marketplace that comply with the law are legal for consumers to purchase. That means they have to be no more than 0.3% THC, up to 5 milligrams per serving. They have to be compliant with the law as far as the child-proof packaging, marketing materials oriented to children, and the businesses that are reputable and selling those products need to be in compliance. This legislation has been vetted for months. It was effective as of Friday, and the people who are selling it in the marketplace should be in compliance with the law. There are further compliance issues that we need to continue to address, both in the interim, well, making sure that people are actually following the law, right? We can't, a year ago, these products were being sold in Minnesota. Today, they're being sold in Minnesota under a legal requirement of packaging, marketing, etc., and with limits in the amount of THC. Making sure that people are following the new law is really important, and the implementation and restrictions in place will be an ongoing issue that both at the state level and at the local level. But complying with the law is the responsibility of anybody who is selling this product.
Hey, we have time for one more.
Since the Board of Pharmacy,
you made racial equity a center point of this press conference. There's nothing explicitly in the law about racial equity, and I would bet that people with capital are able to get a head start now on distributing and making products before you come out next year or the year after that with some racial equity specific language. So I'm just curious how you're feeling about that. Maybe Angela or someone else could talk about that. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to answer that, but it just seems like you're giving people with capital, people with relationships to banks, kind of a head start here.
Well, you know, for centuries, the cannabis industry has been lopsided against Black and Indigenous businesses and entrepreneurs anyway. And so what we're hoping and working with Representative Winkler and Hanson and the rest is that when we start to craft the policies and the implementation, and we work with the Cannabis Board and the people that are responsible for oversight, that we ask that we continue to bring the question of equity to all of the policymakers. It hasn't been a priority ever before, not in any kind of industry actually in Minnesota. We're actually thinking that this is going to be our opportunity to make equity front and center, because it hasn't been implemented in any other state like this before. This isn't the perfect way to do it. And we found in Minnesota that there isn't a perfect way to bring about cannabis legalization. And if we weren't here, equity wouldn't even be on the table. So we're going to have to do it the best way we can. This isn't the most perfect way to bring about legalization. We wanted to do it through HF 600. It didn't happen that way. And so we're working with the scraps we're given, quite frankly. And so we're going to create and we're going to craft equity language. We're going to continue to push equity agenda. We're going to ask Minnesota to also be advocates for equity within this system because actually, I mean, even though Black and Indigenous people have been disproportionately punished, we also know that when there's economic freedom for all people, that the state is lifted higher and it has better quality of life metrics for everyone. Right now, you only have great quality of life metrics if you're white. You know, home ownership, wealth development, land ownership, farming. But we know that through this legalization and talking about cannabis, we can make equity more front and center. And equity and racial equity is important, but it's also important to think about economic and rural equity and bringing forth people who care about the community to grow and provide the quality products for Minnesota, that if we had more of autonomy and farmers to be able to provide this service, that we would do it with ethics and we would do it with concern for our community and concern for public health.
A lot of people didn't think this was going to pass. For the two representatives who will be there next year, what are you going to do, and do you think it's realistic? Are you going to bring this bill up again for full legalization? What are the odds? Do you think it's possible it could pass next year?
For full legalization, well, then that would be you. That's not me. That's not me.
I think that we have a great chance to listen to the people of Minnesota and to act and to deliver on what they're asking for. The vast majority of Minnesotans showed out this weekend and said, we want legal cannabis. So the best thing we can do is to listen to our voters, listen to our constituents, and do what they've asked us to do. It is not our job as elected officials to solely propagate our own personal beliefs about a healing plant that many people find beneficial. It is our job to fulfill the will of Minnesotans and to follow their lead. They have led us here, and we continue to stand by and ready to stand in solidarity and lockstep with them in bringing about the best model of full legalization this country has ever seen.
Okay, guys, thank you. No, wait a second. I got one more. I've been trying to ask it. Majority Leader, Representative Edelson. Given the lack of enforcement agents at the Board of Pharmacy, they have said there is very few. This law does not create any more. Who is it on to police this in the meantime until more are funded?
Well, I think Representative Edelson already alluded to the fact that local governments may have a role in the interim. I think the legislature has more work to do.
Now. They don't have any setup in place for that right now.
Every local government has the setup or the mechanism to enforce local ordinances in their jurisdictions. They have business regulatory authority, licensing authority. There's all kinds of ways that local governments have the power to address legal businesses that exist in their communities. But again, it's really important to emphasize, we were in a state of complete confusion before this bill passed. There was no clarity whatsoever on what could be done where, and many of these products were being sold without any guidance, restrictions, or limits of any kind. So by creating the beginning of a regulatory structure for THC in Minnesota, we are taking a step both towards legalization, but also to greater product safety and public health security in our communities. Thank you.
Representative, why did you all not alert the public to this law after it was signed by the governor like a month ago? Why did it take until the last few days to really kind of come out and say, hey, Minnesota, we legalized 5 milligram edibles?
There were multiple news stories about this in the intervening time.
They weren't
so
very
it was
clear,
not
and they
hidden.
didn't include comment from you.
Well, now they do. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.